well, just to start off, I'm Warren Redlick. I run the Warren Redlick / Critical Enthusiasm YouTube channel. We have Eliana Sheriff. I don't even know. Does your channel have a name?
It's my name. I've been wondering if I should change the branding on that to like Starlink Girl, but I don't know.
Yeah, Space Girl. Yeah.
Space Girl. That might be, but I bet that's got to be taken, right?
I think there's some other potential problems with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Space Girl's got to be taken. So for now, yes, it is my name. As creative as that is. I mean, my name's kind of unique, so you know.
First of all, congratulations on getting started on this. I'm impressed with what you're doing. It's rare to find a young woman who's interested in something like Starlink. I'm an old man, and I'm not that old, but I'm an old man, and like my channel's audience is heavily male, of course, which is common for YouTube, but it's older than the typical YouTube audience. I think space is something that is, because it dates back to, you know, the moon landing and all this stuff in the 60s, people of my generation, because I'm almost a baby boomer, people of my generation tend to be more interested in it. Younger people may be a little less interested. So my channel tends to be older. So it's unusual to find a young woman who finds this interesting. So let me ask you, what triggered your interest in Starlink?
So back in February, my, well, now ex-boyfriend, anyway, ordered a beta test unit. So we got the Starlink user terminal. We tried to test it out, thought it might be cool to make a video about it, just because obviously there is limited access, and even more so at the time. And I had been toying around with making YouTube videos, but not exactly sure where my niche should be. So I made this video, which was kind of poorly done, to be honest. I've since improved greatly.
We all have our first videos.
Yeah, but that started to get a lot of interest. And with my background as a journalist for the past 7 years, I thought, man, this is something that I can really kind of specialize in and do my own sort of independent journalism on Starlink in specific. You know, I've talked about some SpaceX things, but really I focus mostly on Starlink. And it has been awesome. It's been cool to see the progress and keep people up to date. And originally I'm like, oh, is there really enough here with Starlink to make it kind of like my topic of choice? And there is. And I think that that's only going to continue to grow. Well,
I would say about that, number one, if you look around at the Elon verse, if we're going to call it that, there's a lot of Tesla YouTubers. Exactly. And I am not a Tesla YouTuber. I'm not a Starlink YouTuber. I'm an Elon YouTuber. And I'm obsessed with all things Elon. Like, how many videos have you made?
About Starlink specifically?
For your channel, since you started making Starlink videos.
I just got a notification that I've surpassed 100 uploads, but I'd say probably for sure at least 30 about Starlink, if not more. I mean, I'm hitting it hard. You know, if I find a new update, and that's the cool thing too, is my background in journalism. I get off work, come home, shoot a video, edit it in the same night, and then the next morning it's up. So
I would say there's a challenge of when you've done 30 videos, you haven't fully explored the topic. When you've done 300, at some point you may hit that wall of like, well, what new do I have to say about this topic? That could be a challenge. And you know, the other thing is, let's say the Boring Company. It's pretty much Will Bradbury in England is the Boring Revolution channel, and no one else other than me, no one else is really covering the Boring Company at all. I don't think anyone else is really covering Starlink. I mean, I make an occasional video about Starlink, but I don't think there are many people making videos about it. So you've sort of cornered the market on something that is of less interest than Tesla, but there is an audience.
And I think it's a growing audience. I really do, especially since it's starting to be rolled out in more countries and getting approval, you know, for coming soon to Mexico and all that. So I think more people are learning about it, taking interest in it. Unfortunately, I have so many people ask me questions like, when will it come to me? And it's like, they think I work for it and I don't. But I mean, but yeah, no, it's been...
Oh, wait, it gets good. People start telling me ideas that they want me to relay to Elon. Hey, could you tell Elon about this idea? Oh, yeah, next time I see him.
Yeah, right. That is the goal, though. I mean, isn't that the dream, to be able to interview Elon?
That would be a very big thing. Yeah, I did get a chance to speak with Franz von Holzhausen and Drew Baglino at the Plaid Day.
Yeah, I saw you went to that.
That was really special. And I talked to I think it was Elon Musk's chief of staff briefly. I talked to Martin Vieca, who's director of investor relations. I think getting the Elon interview is sort of like the unattainable. Yeah, maybe it'll happen someday, but the odds aren't great. But sure, I would love. I actually made a video of questions I would ask Elon if I got to interview him.
Tim Dodd got the interview. Tim Dodd has gotten multiple interviews with him.
I got to meet Tim Dodd as well and talk to him at Fairlane. Elon's time is limited. I respect the fact that Elon's time is limited. But yeah, no, I would love to talk to Elon. I don't know how many questions I have for Elon. I don't know how many he would answer either. So he's got like proprietary stuff.
If you had just one burning question to ask him, you got to pick one.
Yeah. When will you agree to an interview with me? No, I don't have that. I'm not good at that type of question. So you got interested in Starlink because we're all of us men are happy to hear ex-boyfriend. I hope not for your sake, of course, necessarily, but
it is what it is.
That's how you got interested in it. So what do you find compelling? Like when people look at Tesla, they say, this is going to change transportation for the world. When people look at Neuralink, it's going to change the way our brains work or something like that. When we look at that SpaceX generally, we're going to go to Mars. What do you see as game changing for humanity or really significant for humanity about Starlink?
Well, I mean, every single person that I talk to that has access to it now does describe it as a game changer. And that's because that's what it is, right? The whole idea is to serve the underserved and people in rural communities that just have had pitiful options or no options. And I think that, the digital divide is real, and it's not just, inconvenient, but it really can hold, communities back from being in the 21st century. And so I think while Starlink doesn't apply to me, I don't need Starlink, and I've told people that's why I use my unit as a prop. I don't use it. But for the people that are using it now, I just interviewed a celebrity, a professional wrestler, and, he even he's tried to bribe, internet companies to dig line or buy a tower or something. And then you have people that are, in super rural areas. I interviewed an Indian tribe that basically they had nothing. And now they're in the 21st century. And, it's just, I think that it's making so many people's lives easier, better connected, and connection's everything. Come on. I mean, you don't have to know a lot about it to see its benefit and hopefully, like I think last time we talked a couple months ago and we were talking about, people in Africa, for example, that most people probably wouldn't be able to afford this. So how can it benefit them? So it would be nice to see this to be accessible to people, even if they can't afford it.
Right. Well, if they split it.
Yeah, exactly. Which again, a lot of these questions we have yet to find out the answers to. Can people share units, or, will they have the cost of the terminal? Right now, they're still at over $1,000, for producing those terminals. And that's, according to Elon, their biggest challenge is engineering and cutting the cost of the user terminal.
Well, let's talk about that. Getting the cost of the unit is down. I'm fairly confident that Elon can manage improving manufacturing and design engineering in order to get the cost of the unit down to, say, $500.
Sure.
And you spread that out over 10 years, then all of a sudden it becomes manageable for most people, especially if you're sharing it over a group. What do you see as the other big challenges facing Starlink to get from where it is now to a point where it's steady, stable, growing, a viable entity?
I mean, obviously they're almost at global coverage from what I've read. So I think that will help improve the quality of the service and be able to reach more people. I'm not sure, and you would probably know more about this. I know that they expect over the next 12 months to service, 500,000 people. But is there a limit to how many people, or the capacity of how many people? Maybe so many people want it, but can they serve all of the people that want it? I don't know the answer to that question.
Right. So I'll just address what I know about that, about the serving people. First of all, I believe Elon said they passed the critical 69,420 mark. Yeah.
What a random number.
Yeah. Well, that's a Elon likes to make fun with numbers, and a lot of Elon's fans like to fun with numbers. So 2 weeks, they're going to get there in 2 weeks. I don't know if you saw this video that I made, or if you watch the underlying video. There's something called RDOF, Rural Development Opportunity Fund. And there's this organization that represents fiber optic providers that submitted opposition to the FCC's grant of $900 million or $9 billion or whatever to Starlink to provide service to rural customers. And some sort of subsidy to help get high-speed internet access to rural customers. And the fiber providers aren't going to serve those customers. They just don't want Starlink to get an edge on anything.
Right.
So they submitted this, and I was able to learn a lot from that. My impression is that an individual satellite can serve a large number of people. I think one of the things that's hard for people to grasp is you've got this satellite that here's Earth. I happen to be wearing unintentionally, I'm wearing the right shirt. So you've got a satellite orbiting, and it's basically projecting a cone down to the Earth's surface. And how big is that cone when it hits the Earth? Is it 8 kilometers wide? Is it 80 kilometers wide? Is it 800 kilometers wide? And my original, something I read, I thought it was only 8 kilometers wide, which means you need a whole lot of satellite, because the Earth's really big. Like, it's hard for people to grasp. This is really big.
Yeah.
we don't, we only see a small part of it, right? But it's hard to wrap our minds around how big the Earth's surface is. If it's a big cone, which it is, I forget whether it's like 500 miles across or 500 kilometers diameter. At any given moment, some of it might be over the ocean, right? Some of it might be over a desert. So as long as it's over somewhat populated areas, part of it, then that satellite is useful to reach those people. And it's apparently able to serve a large number of customers off just one satellite. And I don't know the number. I think that's actually one of those questions I would love to get an answer to. Right. How many customers can an individual satellite serve? Like, how many concurrent Netflix streams can it handle? Not every customer is uploading a stream like we're doing now, or downloading a stream like we're doing now. Some customers are on Twitter, some customers are on Facebook, some are on Instagram, some are sending email, and then some are streaming the latest Netflix or Amazon Prime movie. The people who are streaming are using a lot of bandwidth.
Right.
And the people who are just on Twitter, or, and then some people are gaming, and I think the gaming might actually not require as much bandwidth, but it requires low latency. So there's all this network optimization stuff. I think we're probably going to see a second generation and even a third generation satellite that will be able to handle more customers. But my impression, let me get to the point, sorry. My impression is that Starlink will be able to serve at least 100 million customers once you have 44,000 satellites up, and maybe more than that. And it may be that they'll launch more satellites. I don't think there's a limit that would stop them from going to 100,000 satellites. Did you have a thought on that?
Don't they have to get approval though? I mean,
oh yeah.
Obviously, also with Kuiper on the way, I know that there was some controversy over Starlink all of a sudden changing the altitude.
Well, let's talk about Kuiper. Let's talk about the competition, because that always comes up with Tesla. Is the competition coming? The competition is coming. I have a theory that I've stewed on for a while, and I would call it, it's something known as first mover advantage.
Yeah.
So it looks like Starlink is the first mover. They are going to have a functioning, high speed, low latency, high bandwidth internet connection available to a large number of customers at a fairly low cost. And I think that's going to be available. It's basically already available, but it's going to scale. And by the end of this year, there's going to be 500,000 or 1 million customers or more. And before Project Kuiper or any other competing network is up, because nobody's close, right? They're going to have 10 million customers. They're going to have 50 million customers before anybody else gets started. If you're going to launch a second satellite network, why is somebody going to choose you over the established provider? Are you going to be lower cost? Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Do you have some benefit that you're going to provide? Now, let's talk about lower cost. Because SpaceX is launching its own satellites, because their launch cost is lower than anyone else's. Just on Falcon 9 right now, their launch cost is lower than anyone else's. And soon, I would say, by the end of this year, maybe, or maybe early next year, they're going to start launching Starlinks on Starship, which is going to dramatically lower the cost per satellite again. So let me run some numbers. Ballpark, and maybe you have an opinion on this, ballpark, an individual Starlink satellite costs $100,000, $250,000, something like that. I think it's below $250,000. I think they may ultimately get the cost per satellite down around $100,000. launching on Falcon 9, let's say it costs SpaceX $30 million internally for them to do a Falcon 9 launch. You know, they're using a reused booster. They're not charging a markup to themselves for the launch. I think they charge 50 million to another customer, but they're using a booster for the 8th time or whatever. If it's $30 million cost to SpaceX and you spread it over 60 satellites, I think that works up to $50,000 a satellite. Okay, so you're talking about somewhere between $150,000 and $300,000 a satellite to put them in orbit. Go to Starship, and Elon has said they expect the launch to cost $2 million instead of $30 million. And you're launching 400 satellites because it only costs $2 million because they're reusing the upper stage, and the fuel is actually less expensive because methane fuel is cheaper than the RP1 they use in Falcon 9. You get the cost per individual satellite launch, the launch cost down to $5,000 a satellite. And maybe it's $10,000 a satellite. And you're basically potentially approaching $100,000 a satellite, including launch costs, to get them in orbit. And then you look going forward and you say, okay, let's say they're going to have 50,000 satellites in orbit because it's an easier number. I think their target is 44,000, but let's say it's 50,000. And they have to deorbit a satellite after 5 years. So they have to replace 10,000 satellites a year. Well, 10,000 satellites times $100,000 is, if I'm not mistaken, $1 billion a year. Well, that's not a lot. And then if you've got 100 million customers paying $1,000 a year, you've got $100 billion in revenue and $1 billion in costs. There's other costs, right? So let's say it's $1 billion in launch costs a year to keep the operation going. Add 9 billion, say it's 9 times as much money for the other. I don't know what the other expenses are for running the network. You've got some ground stations, you've got some marketing, customer service, whatever. But let's say it's $9 billion a year for all the other costs. You've got $10 billion a year in costs and $100 billion a year in revenue. This is an insane value proposition. So somebody else comes along, their launch costs are higher. Probably their manufacturing costs for the satellites are higher because they don't have Elon's engineering team, SpaceX's engineering team. Their costs are much higher. If they come along and they try to compete on price, Starlink can just lower the price.
Right.
You know, and so you're a second provider. Why am I choosing you over the established provider? What are you offering to me? I think there's a challenge. Like, if you were Jeff Bezos and you're thinking, you know, how much does Jeff Bezos have to throw in to get Project Kuiper up? 10 billion?
Well, he's already invested 10 billion. Yeah.
Okay, sure, but he's not done.
Yeah, no, he's not.
He's going to have to throw in another 10. And at a certain point, you have to say, okay, what's my profit going to be from this operation if I successfully launch a network and I start competing with Starlink and I start threatening to take customers away from them? They're just going to lower their price till I can't compete anymore. And then I make nothing. And I've just invested, I've already put in 10 billion already. I mean, I don't know if all 10 billion that he put in was for Project Kuiper. I think he may have put in 10 billion to Blue Origin. If you were an investor and you're saying, do I want to invest in Project Kuiper? Like, well, my chances of making money, like I could buy into SpaceX. If I have that much money, right, I can buy in on the next SpaceX funding round. And it looks like a much better investment than investing in Project Kuiper. So unless Jeff Bezos just really wants to build his own satellite network for kicks and doesn't mind losing an insane amount of money, which he can afford to lose. And if you leave Jeff Bezos out of it, who else is going to launch a Starlink competitor who doesn't have $180 billion lying around?
Well, and I think, like, for example, OneWeb, right? Their customer is different. They're,
Yep.
you know, working with businesses versus the individual.
But they only have 60 satellites.
Yeah, they don't, nothing.
That's not real competition. And it, you know, if you're serving a different customer, and then you still have this other problem. All right, you're serving these other customers. What's to stop them from saying we're going to switch to Starlink?
Right.
I mean, you know, what does OneWeb offer that would make somebody stay with them over Starlink? I just think there's this real potential for Starlink to effectively become a monopoly. Now,
Right.
It's not a complete monopoly because they don't compete with fiber in the cities. There's lots of places where they're not dominant, but they may become very much dominant in serving customers who don't currently have internet access.
I feel like there's such little details that have been released about Kuiper, but one thing that I read is it sounds like they'll be launch agnostic. So I don't know if that would help or hurt. You know, if if they're not just limiting it to their own.
Oh, they're going to launch on Starship.
I mean, would that even be possible?
Sure. I mean, well, I mean, I think, you know, we've seen that SpaceX has launched satellites for communications, telecommunications providers. I think SpaceX is launch agnostic. They are willing to launch a competitor's satellites into orbit, but it's almost like you have to brand. Number one, you're going to be paying a much higher price for the launches than SpaceX is paying for their launches.
Right.
And are your satellites cost competitive? I could almost see Elon saying, "Sure, we'll launch a second competitor just so people can't accuse us of being a monopoly." Right? And we'll let them get 1,000 satellite network in orbit so they can offer some kind of competition, but it won't be real competition.
So what do you think? I mean, obviously, what do you think is the main benefit or the main motivation to launch Kuiper? Obviously, they must think it will be successful to some degree. I think if they can offer a cheaper price to the consumer, perhaps because the Amazon ecosystem is just, if you're already in it, maybe you're more inclined to switch over if it's a little cheaper, but I don't know how they're going to make it cheaper.
I don't see that a competitor would be able to take market share. I mean, I guess the other theory is, let's suppose some countries want certain conditions and they won't agree to let Starlink operate because of whatever rules censorship rules they have or something. And maybe there's a market for Project Kuiper or some other satellite network to serve countries that are much more restrictive.
Right.
I suppose that's a theory. I mean, that's a challenging theory because they're probably not going to want anybody to serve them. You know, North Korea is not going to want anybody in their country to have any satellite internet or any kind of internet at all. I don't know what countries would be appropriate, but
well, and look at what's happening in Cuba even.
I'm afraid I'm woefully ignorant on current events.
There's
I know something's happening.
a lot of protests, but I think that I read that their internet was just shut off basically.
Right.
Which, I mean, that maybe Starlink could come in handy in this.
No, but they would instruct Starlink to turn off their internet, and Starlink would comply so that they are not offending the local government, so that they have potential. My impression of Starlink is they're going to comply with local law. Elon is smart enough to say, I'm not going to get in trouble with these guys. I don't need to.
Right.
That's not what Hitchhiker's Guide would call somebody else's problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I just have this theory that the first mover advantage is something that might deter anyone from launching a network. And other than, I guess if you're Jeff Bezos and you're building New Glenn, you got to do something with it. Yeah. For those who don't know, New Glenn is the larger scale rocket that Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin rocket company is supposedly developing that will be roughly competitive with Falcon 9 or somewhere between Falcon 9 and Starship, but the second stage so far is not intended to be reusable. They're hoping to land the booster on a ship, but the second stage won't be reusable. So and they haven't done even a test launch yet. So they're a long way from getting there. But if they are going to go forward with New Glenn, maybe New Glenn would be a good angle, a good use for a good way of launching Project Kuiper into orbit. And maybe that would be reasonably low cost, although I think it's still not cost competitive with Starlink.
I was reading, just trying to do some research about Kuiper with the limited details that are out there. And I didn't realize that the guy heading it used to work for Starlink.
I did not know that.
That's kind of interesting to me.
When we're talking about the challenges facing Starlink getting going, I just laid out a revenue model and a cost model. And so I see really, really strong potential for Starlink to be highly, highly profitable fairly quickly. Somebody from ARK Invest did this analysis, and for some reason they have much higher cost structure and they have much lower revenue than I'm projecting. And Elon talked about this deep chasm of negative cash flow. I don't know how deep it is. I mean, once you get 1 million customers paying $1,000 a year, you've got $1 billion a year in revenue. Once you get 10 million customers, you've got $10 billion a year in revenue. I don't think they're that far from achieving that. And I don't know if we've talked about this before. I made a video where I talked about why I think Starlink, I laid out those numbers, 100 billion in revenue, 10 billion in costs, and what that translates to in terms of market cap. And I was expecting 100 million as the sort of maximum number of customers they would achieve at $1,000 a year. And the day after I made my video, there was some survey that came out that there were 65 million customers for Starlink in the US alone at $1,000 a year. That there are 65 million, because we don't realize how many people don't have good internet. Right? Because I'm spoiled too. I have 250 megabits down and 50 megabits up, which means I can basically stream like 5 live streams, right? Or more, that's up. And I can download 20 Netflix movies or 10 Netflix movies at the same time. So let's say if we have 5 people in the house, we can all be watching Netflix and it's not even skipping a beat. So we don't need it.
Right.
But it's hard for us to grasp how many people don't have it. And if it's 65 million in the United States, it's probably 50 million or more in Europe. It's probably a lot of people in China. And I'm sure Elon can work out a deal with the Chinese government to establish whatever censorship they need. I think it's easily over 100 million worldwide, that the total addressable market for people who don't have good internet access. And it's hard to imagine the competition that's going to stop them from getting all of those customers, if I'm right about first mover advantage. Right.
Isn't China trying to deploy their own low Earth orbit constellation though? I mean, I would sense that they probably want control over that operation. And
it's very possible that there will be countries that say no, and China is very possibly a country that will say no. At the same time, Elon Musk has the first fully foreign-owned factory in China. He seems to get along well with Chinese officials. They might say, you know what, why don't we just use Elon's network? Or we use both. They might allow both. India, is another country that probably has a lot of rural customers who would benefit from it. There's a lot of potential in a lot of places for this to serve a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And we haven't even talked about cruise ships and airplanes.
Oh yeah.
Remote military installations, and SpaceX is already a provider to the U.S. military, so it's easy to imagine them working out some kind of deal to serve the U.S. military. Maybe they work with NATO military, other NATO militaries. There's a huge potential customer base for this that isn't really served by anyone else, particularly the low latency. Like, you can have geosynchronous orbit. And this is something that I think you understand, and I think I understand. If you have a satellite in geosynchronous orbit, which means it's orbiting over the same point on the Earth, right? As the Earth rotates, it stays over the same spot as the Earth rotates. Those are much farther away, so it takes longer for light to travel. And so when you click yes on a button on your internet browser, it takes a second or 2 seconds for it to respond. Where if you have low latency, like on Starlink or like fiber, you click and it happens to you, it seems instant.
Right.
And that's a big deal for video games. It's sort of just a big deal in general for user experience that we prefer to have low latency. So I think for a lot of applications, Starlink is going to effectively be the choice.
Yeah.
Just like Tesla is effectively becoming the choice if you want an electric vehicle. You can tell me the competition is coming till the cows come home. Competition isn't coming.
No, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think that's, why it is a little bit expensive to get your Starlink going. But for those who have been underserved by HughesNet or Viasat, and there's no data caps with Starlink currently. But the question too is like, is that going to change? Will that monthly subscription stay at $99 a month?
No, it's going to come down. Elon said it will come down over time. But if it comes down to $50 a month, and instead of 100 million customers, you have $200 million customers, you still have $100 billion in revenue, and you still have shockingly low costs. I guess that's a question I have for you. Have you heard different revenue? I think his name is Sam Corris from ARK Invest. Have you Sam? I think it's Sam. Maybe it's Brett. There's somebody at ARK Invest who did these numbers, and I invited him to come on my channel. He didn't respond. Have you heard any different numbers?
No, I haven't. I know that with my talk with Scott Manley, I mean, his conclusion is that the biggest factor will be, will they have enough customers? And so from what we think is, yeah.
My cousin has been bugging me. My cousin now has it. He's a beta customer. My cousin lives in southern New Hampshire, not too far from Boston, but off a bad dirt road. Nobody's going to run fiber to his home. I think he was using HughesNet, and the difference was just shocking how much better it is than HughesNet.
In beta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like,
he said there was the occasional moment where it didn't work, but insanely fast, much less expensive, much better alternative for him. He's probably got it. I haven't checked with him in a while. It's probably working great for him now. he certainly hasn't contacted me and said, Warren, this stinks, right?
Right, right.
So it's looking good.
I've interviewed a lot of people about it, and I mean, everyone loves it.
Is there something else you wanted to talk about? The polar orbit.
Launches and the inter laser links and how that will be the model moving forward for the next generation satellites.
Yeah, are they testing laser links already?
Yep, above the poles. So ground stations not needed. So,
yeah,
and
I think they still need ground stations, but the laser links. This is for people who don't understand this. Suppose you're in London and you're a high frequency trader,
right.
and you want to access the New York stock market. If you're using Starlink and it's using laser links, because light travels faster in space than it travels in fiber, there are fiber optic cables under the sea or on the bottom of the sea going from London to New York. You send it up a couple hundred miles to a Starlink satellite, it bounces off a couple Starlink satellites and comes down to New York. It gets there faster than it does straight on a fiber through the ocean, because fiber cuts, I think light travels about half the speed in fiber that it travels in space. So it ends up being a faster connection, and that matters to certain high frequency traders. So and the laser links are just valuable in other ways.
Right. I mean, those are like applications, just like we were saying, the in-flight Wi-Fi and the cruise ships, and just things that there's so many applications.
So let me throw you out some of my big ideas. SpaceX wants to build a colony on Mars. And, an obvious thing is, well, maybe there'll be a Starlink network over Mars. I don't think that's actually that important, because I think all the people will be in one place and they'll be tightly packed in, so it won't be hard to wire everything. But the communication between Mars and Earth, and I don't know if you've seen my video about this, I proposed a network of Starlink satellites orbiting the sun in different orbits between Earth and Mars, so that when you want to send a signal from Earth to Mars or Mars to Earth, you have to basically send a laser from one to the other. And basically, if you had a really large network, let's say 1,000 satellites in various orbits around the sun, in between Earth orbit and Mars orbit, they would effectively serve as relays. And you could you can't speed up the latency. Light's still going to take however long it takes to get from one to the other. You can't make it faster. This might actually make it slightly slower. But the volume of data that you'd be able to transmit should be a lot higher if you have, let's say, 9 orbits. And so you basically have 9 paths to take the signal along, and they're boosting the signal. So that's a theory. And this is a down the road thing, right? We don't have a Martian colony yet. Hopefully in 10 years, we'll have the beginnings of a Martian colony. And in 20 years, we'll have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people living on Mars. The more people you have living on Mars, the more important bandwidth is. Right? Because people are going to want to communicate home. So presumably, I mean, my daughter wouldn't, but not to us anyway. Maybe she would want to communicate, not to us. I'm kidding, of course. But I think so. That's a crazy idea. Another crazy idea is, all right, you're mass producing and the design of the Starlink Earth Mars network satellite would be different than this network that's designed to communicate directly to Earth, because the distance between the satellites is going to be much farther than 200 miles.
Well, I'm curious, and maybe we would need like an astronomy expert, but is that feasible to have an orbit around the sun?
Sure. It's just you just get it up to the right velocity so that it's traveling somewhere between the velocity. There's an appropriate velocity for any orbit.
Right.
You just have to get it traveling into the Earth. Is basically Earth. People don't understand orbital mechanics. The reason the Starlink satellite stays in orbit is because it's going just fast enough that as it falls towards the Earth, it goes around, it's going around the Earth, and it's falling at the Earth. If you were sitting still at that height, you would just fall straight down. The more you move, the more you fall over the edge. And if you fall just fast enough, you just keep falling around the Earth.
17,000 miles an hour.
Right. So now imagine you're trying to fall around the sun. Yeah. Well, there's a certain velocity for whatever distance you are from the sun to not fall into the sun or not fly out of that orbit and go somewhere else.
I guess I'm thinking about like exposure to CMEs or something.
Oh, there's all kinds of potential problems like radiation or coronal mass. Well, coronal mass injection might knock out a few satellites.
Right.
If your satellites they're orbiting all the way around the sun, like, so if this is the sun here, and Earth and Mars are on opposite sides, you've got this whole network of satellites that are all around the sun, and you can send signals both ways around. Suppose they're on opposite sides of the sun, they can't even communicate with each other. And that's probably going to be a few days a year. I forget, maybe, I think there's a period of a few days every year or two when they're on exact opposite sides of the sun. They're 240 million miles apart, so it's hard to get the signal to reach each other, and the sun's blocking the way. So if you have a network of satellites around, then the signal just goes around, and it takes a little longer because it's not a straight line.
Right.
So I think there's potential for that. Sorry for Warren's fancy props.
We got props going. I love it.
So I think there's potential for that. And the sort of the larger idea that I have is that they're mass producing these satellites. What other kinds of space objects could they produce, satellites or otherwise, that could be used to orbit the sun and study the sun, that could be used to orbit the Earth and serve as a telescope? Could they be used for astronomy? Instead of facing down to Earth, maybe you put optics on them or other types of measurement devices to do some kind of astronomy. What kind of amazing astronomy could you do with Starlink satellites orbiting the Earth or orbiting the sun?
That's something I've had a lot of discussions with Jonathan McDowell. He's a Harvard astrophysicist, astronomer, and I did ask him about that, and he said that actually would be really hard to do, but he didn't get into why. So that might be an interesting topic to kind of delve into.
Well, we know that there's some kind of setup where you take different telescopes or different radio telescopes and you put them in different places, that if you do it right, they can sort of share. There's somehow that they can work together to achieve a better result than each can achieve on their own, even combining their results alone to go. And so I think there's a question about whether something like that is viable. Maybe, but what other, it's one of the things I'm excited about with Starlink that I think no one sees is, well, you're mass producing things that seem to survive well in space. What else could you do with that?
Right.
Could you establish something, like I have this idea of this ring around the sun, and, maybe that enables some other kind of communication. Maybe we can reach out to Jupiter. Maybe you could study Jupiter by putting a network of Starlink type satellites orbiting Jupiter or Venus and get a much better understanding of other planets. Could we eventually come up with, and maybe Starlink isn't the right answer for this, but some kind of thing that we can launch to other solar systems?
Right.
And can we find a way to relay the signal back? If you send something to another solar system, it's going to be really hard to send a signal back. But if you had a string of them, maybe they could relay the signals. And you could, and it would take, 50 years to get the first satellite to reach the other, so maybe 100 years to get the first satellite to reach the other solar system. But then it's only 3 years for the signal to get back if you have the right. I just have like this crazy, but I have all these hopes and dreams for what can you do with this technology? What can you do with that technology? Could you, Elon, actually, I don't know if you caught this. I'm sorry, this is off the Starlink topic, but I have I think my t-shirt's dirty. I have a Starship t-shirt where I have different configurations of Starship. It's based on a quote that Elon had in an interview where he talked about stretching the tanks, that if you reduce the payload and make the tanks larger, then you could go farther. And what if you made a Starship that didn't have fins because it wasn't going to try to land back on Earth? What if you just made like a robotic explorer with a very small payload, and you said, let's put as much fuel in this thing as we can and make it as light as possible otherwise, and let's see how far out we can send this. How much, a robotic explorer, basically, how much exploration we could do, because you could have a significant payload of scientific instruments and good communication because it would be large enough to have, powerful signal. What could you do with that? I don't know. I think there's tremendous possibilities out there.
I love that idea.
And I don't know if you caught this too. This is just the other day. Elon was talking, I think he was on Twitter, and he said that they're going to open a new factory to build engines for Starship.
Is that in Austin?
I think it's in McGregor, Texas. It's where they have a test facility where they test the engines. They wanted to do it at Starbase, Texas, but I guess there isn't enough infrastructure at Starbase, Texas to really support that kind of manufacturing. They're going to be building a new Starship Raptor factory at McGregor, Texas. And then he said that the existing factory in California would pivot to producing, I think the new factory is going to produce Raptor 2 engines. Mm-hmm. So there's a new Raptor coming, right? They have an update to the Raptor that's going to be presumably better. The one in California, I think, will be producing the vacuum optimized engines. That's a little detail for people who don't know. When the rocket's at the Earth's surface, the atmosphere is dense, and you want a particular shape to the bell, the bottom of the engine, that ejects the propellant the right way so that it's most efficient. And when you get up into orbit, if you ever watch a launch, as it gets higher and higher, the plume starts to spread out, which basically means the engine's getting less efficient. And when you see the second stage go up, the second stage is using a vacuum optimized engine, because it doesn't need to operate in sea level high pressure environment, so they can change the shape of the engine bell, and it's more efficient at high altitudes, above the earth, basically when there's no oxygen or no atmosphere. California's factory is going to produce the vacuum optimized engines and experimental engines. So what I love about Elon is they're thinking ahead. Tesla's thinking ahead. We don't know what vehicles they have in the Tesla Skunk Works. We don't know what's coming for Starship. There was talk about a larger Starship, and Elon pretty much said they're not going to bother doing that now. The current Starship is 9 meters or 30 feet in diameter, and he had talked in the past about an 18-meter or 60-foot diameter rocket, and it sounds like he thinks there's not much gain in doing that, so they're not going to bother, at least for now, going to a larger Starship. That the current generation Starship is so good, why bother worrying about making the next generation Starship? And maybe 10 years from now they'll do that, but not now.
Right.
So, but really cool to see that they're thinking ahead. They've got a lot of great ideas. I love Gwynne Shotwell. I don't know how much you follow Gwynne Shotwell, but I try to get my daughters to listen to Gwynne Shotwell talk and see what because we live in a world, maybe you probably understand this better than I do, but we live in a world where one way or another, a lot of women are given the message, you can't do that.
For sure.
And Gwynne Shotwell said, yes, I can.
I feel like she hopefully inspires more women to be interested in STEM. Yeah. I know me for sure. This is kind of a new realm for me, because my whole life it's, I think, it's never been super popular for women to be into this stuff, or I'm not exactly sure what the reason is, but learning about it, and just there is so much free education online, really cool to understand it, and there's so much to learn. Yeah. But I really enjoy educating myself about it, and also talking to experts. It's really cool that Scott Manley will kind of explain things to me, or Jonathan McDowell.
I should ask you that question. How did you manage to land an interview with Scott Manley?
It's simple. You send an email.
You just asked.
Hey man, you got 20 minutes to spare? I mean, we talked about, he's super down to earth. Like, no pun intended. Yeah. But no, he's really cool. It's been awesome.
What do you think about this? So we're going off the topic a little bit. We're both YouTubers. I don't feel like a celebrity yet, but there are definitely moments where somebody says, "Hey, aren't you Warren from the YouTube channel?" Yes. That started to happen a little bit. I was out with Meet Kevin. Do you know Meet Kevin Paffrath? He's from Ventura, California. He lives in Ventura. He's running for governor of California. He's got a channel with like 1.7 million subscribers. So we're in my home turf in Boca Raton, and we just went to Starbucks, and we're sitting outside. We're sitting in Starbucks talking, and like 3 people approach him and start talking to him, and one of them recognized me.
Wow, that's cool.
So, but he's got, I don't know, 20, 50 times as many subscribers as I do, and it's kind of interesting, when you're walking down, and his celebrity is nothing compared to some of the big celebrities. You experience that, and I don't know how much you get that because you're doing broadcast journalism.
TV news anchor, yeah, people will recognize me, but it's a local celebrity thing, right? It's aren't you on the news? Aren't you the news lady? Well, yeah, I'm one of them.
I don't know if you know this about me. I created West Boca News, which is I live in West Boca Raton, Florida, which is, I don't know, call it 100,000 people. And, there was no news for West Boca Raton. And I built, basically it's a Facebook page and website and Instagram, whatever. And I would make some videos and do a lot of Facebook posts and articles. And people started recognizing me from West Boca News. But, I could go to the next town and nobody knows who I am.
Right.
I would go to a high school. I would speak on behalf. I went to Rice University, and I would show up to a college fair for Rice University, and people would walk up and say, "Hey, aren't you Warren from West Boca News?" But I would go to Parkland, which is the next town over, and no one recognized me because they don't care about West Boca Raton.
Right. Yeah. Do you ever get recognized for, your political career?
I probably did years ago, but not now. I mean, not never, I guess, but not very much. No.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, I ran for governor of New York in 2010, and I got I almost won. I got 1% of the vote. So I was only lost by about 50–60%. It was close. It was this close.
What about, you were telling me that your soon to be former career as a lawyer? What's going on there?
Oh, so I've been an attorney since 1995.
Okay.
I was very into it for the first 20+ years. I handled thousands of cases and something like 50 jury trials where I actually, that's a big deal. Doing one jury trial is something a lot of lawyers never do. I've done 50. Actually getting jury verdict from a jury. I've argued cases. I've been in more than 100 courts. I've argued appeals. We moved to Florida in 2011, and Florida laws, and I got admitted as an attorney in 2012, and I started doing I never was able to pick up the volume of work that I had when I was in New York, because I sort of semi-retired when I came down here, and I tried but never really quite picked up. I got some cases here and there, but never got to the point where I had a volume of cases, and started looking for other things to do. Tried real estate agent, tried West Boca News, probably tried something else. And then at some point I started making YouTube. I had been making YouTube videos before we got here, but I made a YouTube video about Starship and it took off, and like, oh, let me make another video. Hey, that one did good too. All right, let me make another video. And all of a sudden I have a career as a YouTuber, which is, it's not like I'm not making millions of dollars, right? But I'm not doing bad.
Yeah.
I'm not making 100,000 a year, but I might get there, and that's not bad.
So it's enough. I mean, was that your goal with YouTube, to just segue careers, or you don't really need to segue careers, but you enjoy it?
I didn't even have a goal. I just like making videos.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm making money. Well, I guess I'll make more. And I think there's sort of I'll say this about business. So I've done a lot of different ventures in life, starting my own law firm, working for somebody, trying real estate, whatever. I think my approach has been, you tried a bunch of different things, and if something works, then do more of it.
Right.
So I was making YouTube videos. I like making YouTube videos. I'm making some money at it. Well, let's do some more. And there's sort of a growth potential thing. So with West Boca News, we built it up pretty well. We have, 35,000 followers on Facebook, and in a community of 100,000 people, that's kind of a big deal. But it's not going to extend. You could try to make it a bigger and reach a larger audience, but then you're going to dilute your message. But ultimately, how big is West Boca News going to grow? It's not global.
Right.
YouTube's global. So I see a lot more growth potential in YouTube, and I enjoy it more. And maybe I got tired of West Boca News a little bit, and I still like it, but some things were too hard. You cover crime stories, people start getting mad that you're reporting on their son got arrested, or you do restaurant inspection. It's funny, like restaurant inspection reports actually make people more angry than.
Oh, I bet.
If you report a restaurant got a bad inspection, then they're more mad at you than the guy who got arrested.
Well, we cover stuff all the time that pisses people off. So I've experienced my fair share of that. They're like, oh, this is embarrassing, whatever. My brother did something, but can you just take down the article? And it's like, this is the news, man. Like, this isn't, it is what it is. We have to cover it. So
I love asking people, well, George Zimmerman was found not guilty, so should they be required? And now O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. Should all the newspapers and TV stations, whatever, be required to delete all the articles about George Zimmerman's trial?
I don't think so.
Of course not.
Yeah.
It's news.
Exactly.
It's news. Like it or not, it's news.
I will say, I feel like there is definitely interest in Starlink. And speaking of being a YouTuber, January 1st, I had 139 subscribers. Today, July, just about over 6 months later, I have 12,500 something.
Congratulations.
So to me, that's just like crazy exponential growth for Starlink.
Do you feel like the views are growing as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because this is a trap. This is an opinion. Okay. You will see some YouTubers who have a lot of subscribers, and you might feel a little bit of jealousy that, oh, I'm better than this guy. Why does he have so many subscribers? And of course, it's because he started earlier. But look at the view count on their most recent videos.
Right.
And if they have, like, there's this one guy, Scotty Kilmer, who makes videos about like used cars or something and fixing cars, has 4 million subscribers, but his videos get like 10,000 views.
What?
Right. So yeah, I'm making up the number. Maybe it's 50,000 views, but even if it's 50,000 views, that's nothing for 4 million subscribers. It's really important. This is like, I actually talked to Tim Dodd about this too, when I saw him at the Plaid event. It's really important as a YouTuber to, why did I start making these videos? What motivates me about these videos? And there's this thing, and as an attractive woman, you're going to have this challenge, is that people want you to, and you probably get pressured, or maybe you don't mind, but who was I talking to? I was talking to a woman who did the weather here in Palm Beach County, Florida, and they tell her what to wear, right? You're supposed to wear certain clothes. They want you to look a certain way. And you know that there are women who are on YouTube who say, you know, if I do this, I'll get more views. If I do this, I'll get more clicks. And it's sort of like, well, what are you trying to do? And what's the, like I was gonna say, what's the inner voice? For me, there's about 7 of them, but you know, what stories do you want to tell? And there's a certain point where you realize, you know, I did this video and I got a lot of views. I should make more videos like that. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Did I want to make videos like that because that's a story I want to tell? Or is that just, I'm going to make money from that, but it's not going to inspire my passion? I'm not poor, right? I'm not struggling financially. And, you know, everybody struggles financially. And, you know, there's moments where we're like, well, how are we going to pay this? But it's always like, well, we'll just get the money from over there. It's never like we're going to starve, we're going to lose the house. We're not going to be in that situation ever again. So I'm not doing this thinking, well, I need to make $1 million a year. And I've never had that attitude. I built a law firm in Albany, New York, and I probably could have built it into a, you know, $1 million a year in income. And I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I was making enough money that I didn't need to worry about that. And the danger is, if you chase the money, at some point you might lose your passion.
Right.
And eventually you'll lose the audience.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, the problem for young actresses, right? They look good when they're 20. They look okay. They look pretty good when they're 25. At some point, the directors aren't calling for them to do a bikini shot anymore.
Right.
And what's your, and some of them are able to segue into, they're not only good looking, they're also very good actresses, right? And they're able to say, but you can sort of typecast yourself. So like for me, it's just, I got stories in my head, too many, and I got to pick which story am I going to tell, and I just tell the story I want to tell. So like the other day, I made a video about this guy E for Electric. I just got irked that he made a video I didn't like. He was trashing Tesla, and I didn't like the way he was trashing. And that video happened to take off. I could do every video trashing somebody, and I've made a bunch of videos where I trash people who are anti-Tesla. But I only do that like every 2 or 3 months, because I'm not really, it's only when they hit it's like sticking in my craw, like that one really bothered me, then I got to make that video. And I honestly, I make a video like that, and I got like 10 comments and emails saying, hey, Warren, you should debunk this guy. You should debunk that guy. But I'm not the debunking channel. I'm the Elon fanboy channel. I mean, do you have that thought? Like, what, like, and I would say this to you, you know, what other videos have you made since you started making Starlink videos, and what gets you excited to, what stories do you want to tell?
So I kind of expanded into touching on, I mean, I made like 2 videos about my ex-boyfriend's Tesla. I made.
Oh, was it a good, what, maybe it wasn't a good boyfriend, but was it a good car?
It was a great car. I would like to get a Tesla someday. Yeah, for sure. Or Cybertruck would be pretty cool. So I've done a couple of those. I've done a couple videos more focused on astronomy and kind of some of the negative outcomes of the light pollution and low Earth orbit constellations, and that actually pissed some people off. You know, you should be rah Starlink all the time. It's like, well, I'm just, you know, telling the situation like it is. You know, there's good and bad to all of it. And then I did a quick video about that UFO Pentagon report.
Oh yeah.
Quick interest in that. I might start to do more in that niche. I think it's a really big niche, and I think it's interesting. I think, you know, we're all human. We all have a vested interest in knowing if we're alone out here. I don't think that we're alone. And then also, like, for example, I did a vlog of my crazy epic hike, and I thought, oh gosh, am I gonna, you know, bother people by posting this? And then I realized, you know, if they don't want to watch it, they won't watch it. But I can't limit myself with something that I'm passionate about, right? My channel is Eliana Sheriff at the moment. Right. It's not, you know, Starlink, only Starlink. And I think even some people have said, you know,
how did that video do?
Came for the Starlink, stayed for the hiking. It didn't get that many views. So like last week, I launched the video I was working on with Scott Manley, and my kind of thesis to the video was, hey, will Starlink fail or will it succeed compared to the past, historical failures of low Earth orbit constellations? I thought that was a good topic to pick apart, especially because Elon kind of touched on it in his recent remarks, and that video has like over 45,000 views in just a couple days.
Right.
Which is good for my channel. But then I've also launched a couple other videos that have like 4,000 to 5,000 views. So but typically I was getting like, I'd be lucky to get 1,000 just a couple months ago. So the bar is being set higher. I think that I'm passionate about my niche, and I don't know if everyone believes that, but there's a reason why I'm pounding out videos left and right every week. No one's forcing me to do this. I'm interested in it.
Well, most people don't know this. I think I know this. Local broadcast journalism does not pay well.
Oh yeah. Hey. Yeah.
I have a friend. One of my best friends was a local broadcast journalist. I have a political career. We were elected to the town. He got me to run for town board with him. Right. And I think he's now a county commissioner, but he told me, I think I was talking to somebody who was like a weatherman in Syracuse. Yeah. Who was like the night shift guy, the guy who covered the news, and it's like that guy's making 20,000 a year. Yeah. It's not people don't realize that a lot of it's glamorous, right? I mean, maybe it doesn't feel glamorous, but it looks glamorous to us. But it doesn't pay that well, and so you've got to figure out, okay, maybe I find a way to get moved up, because I guess the success path is you get moved up to a major network.
It is, but even that is seeing a decline. I think the pandemic has affected the industry, and it's been struggling because people are on YouTube. People aren't really watching television like they used to, and I
can't watch it, to be honest.
No.
Forgive me this, I'm red pilled. I can't watch. That's why I didn't know about Cuba. I saw somebody mention Cuba on Clubhouse or something, and I'm like, I literally don't know what's happening in the news, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah.
Because
that's actually a video that I was toying around with the idea of making as kind of like misconceptions about TV news.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't have my hair and makeup person. I do it all myself. Yeah. No, I don't have a cameraman. I do it all myself.
Yeah.
No, we're not making the big bucks just because we're on TV. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like that's something that I might do.
I would avoid the angry tone because you have it. But
yeah.
Do they tell you what to wear?
No, they don't. Come on, like have good judgment, right? My old station had more of a dress code, no loud patterns. You can't wear black.
Yeah.
I've never encountered that at my current station. So every station is a little different. Some are more strict.
I think the one here, and she did move up. I think she did move up and got a network job, but it was something about, because we're in Florida, it had to be like sunny, bright colors. Right. Yeah. There's sort of like the way you're supposed to look in Florida. I don't know.
Well, you were talking about a little bit ago of how, women have this expectation, and man, have I found that on my YouTube, so many people will comment about my makeup and say how horrible it is, which thanks guys. But it's kind of like, well, what does that have to do with my
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
It's either comments about your makeup sucks, you're wearing too much, which I've tried to wear less lately, or what's your OnlyFans?
Oh yeah.
What's your
So just to make you feel better, I sometimes don't shave, and I get comments about not shaving. My hair is a little long right now, and I get comments about my hair. And I think the striking number one, you probably get more comments than I do about your looks, maybe because you're better looking, and because there is a population of incels watching YouTube, right? We know that. I really just don't care.
Yeah.
I think it's hard, and some women may care and some women don't care. I just don't. I honestly think that I'm ugly. I've always thought that I was ugly. I can't believe any woman would talk to me, right? And growing up, my friends said, Warren, you're ugly. That girl's not going to talk to you. That's my life. So, and I don't mind, right? I'm actually arrogant and very self-confident in life. I don't know if arrogant's the right word. I'm probably arrogant in some ways, but I just literally don't care when somebody says something about my hair. Like, look, I'm making a video. If you're interested in the content, you're interested in the content. And look, I'll shave. If I'm doing like my Sunday live streams, I try to shave for my Sunday live streams. I'm trying to shave more for my videos. Like I interviewed Dennis Kucinich. I don't know if you saw that. He was a presidential candidate years ago. I think he's currently running for the mayor of Cleveland. He was mayor of Cleveland. I wore a golf shirt instead of a t-shirt for Dennis Kucinich. You know, I thought that was appropriate, and no one watched that video. Like, I can't believe no one watched that video.
Oh no.
That's like I thought that was a really good interview. It was like one of my lowest view counts, 3,000 views. I'm like, I just got 30,000 views on this video I just made. How did I only get 3,000? I interviewed the Fort Lauderdale mayor, and I got like 8,000 views. Dennis Kucinich was he was a presidential candidate like twice.
It's weird when it's like hit or miss. You know, you expect something to do really, really good, and it's a flop. And I don't know if that's title or thumbnail.
I would say, like, when you got Scott Manley's a celebrity, so you're going to get views. If you choose to interview someone who's really well known, you're going to get more views. That's one of the reasons you'd want to interview Elon, right? Aside from the fact that you really want to interview Elon, if you interview Elon, you're going to get a million views, and you're going to get another 100,000 subscribers for that interview, which is dangerous. That's another thing, by the way, about the YouTube algorithm. I don't know if you know this, or I've heard this. I don't know if it's true. If your subscribers don't watch your videos, then YouTube is less likely to recommend your video to others. So if your subscriber count goes up, and let's say you stop making videos your subscribers want to see, or your subscribers lose interest in that topic, or you become tired, you lose your passion, and they can tell, then your channel can tank. Your view count can tank. So that's why I'm so focused on stay talking about what you're passionate about. Don't worry about trying to get an extra 1,000 subscribers today. Don't worry about making money today. Just make the videos you care about, and sooner or later you're going to have a hit.
Right.
You know, what I found is I have one video that had 400,000 views.
I saw that.
And I'm like, I'm probably going to do a remake of there's one particular video. I don't know if it was that one. There's one particular video I'm going to do a remake of. I'm going to do the remake because I want to make money. It's like, I've got a bug in me that you could do that video. It was early in my channel. It's like the 10 ways that Elon Musk is going to 10 industries that Elon Musk is going to destroy, or something like that. Like, I've got a bug in me, like the quality of that video, the sound quality was worse, the video quality was worse, and things have changed, right? So I'm like, I could remake that video. All right, and that's like a bug. It's not eating away at me enough that I've made the video yet, but it's like eating away at me. I'm going to have to make that video again, and that video will probably get a lot of views because it got a lot of views before. And the audience in a year when I make it won't remember that I made that 2 years ago.
Well, and if you do it better, I think it's worth revisiting.
Better and different content.
Yeah, you have more information probably about all of those industries as time has progressed. It's so exciting. It's a great time to be alive.
Are there consistent comments you get on your videos that annoy you and or surprise you or make you think? Because, I get all the negative anti-Elon comments, and Elon's a fraud and all this other stuff. Are you getting comments like that? Or
I got some today. So I released a video today that I interviewed that pro wrestler, WWE, Matt Hardy. And he, someone was commenting, why are you giving this technology, this vaporware technology, any attention? It's a scam. And I'm like, no, it's not.
Everything's a scam.
Right. So I got, but more so the comments I get are, I put in my pre-order months and months and months ago. When am I going to get it? Well, I don't have an answer.
I think you mentioned that somewhere else.
That's the most common that I get, and then also about my makeup. Those are the most annoying.
Yeah.
By far the most annoying. It makes me want to make a video where it's like, celebrities read mean tweets.
Yes,
and I just want to like fire off like all of. I had one guy write, "Oh no, lesbian arms."
That would be good, actually. Like if you did like a 2-minute video on Twitter. Like not for your channel.
Twitter.
Yeah. You did like a 2-minute video with you reading mean comments.
Right.
And then you close with like this or something like that.
I mean, yeah.
Maybe that's not on brand, but you close with something saying, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate all your helpful comments on my makeup. It's led me to change how I do my makeup." Okay, it hasn't, but I'll think about it.
It has a little bit. Here's the thing. If everyone's saying I'm wearing too much makeup, maybe they're onto something.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't need as much makeup. Maybe it's like kind of this weird backhanded compliment. And, I'm listening, but it's kind of like, man, I'm asking you to comment about this topic that I'm talking about. But yeah, I think the number one thing that people want to know from me is, when will I get it in my area? And when will I get my Starlink that I signed up for months and months ago? And unfortunately, I don't have those answers, but
I think it's going to scale up fast. I think probably if the chip shortage is hurting Powerwall, I don't know if you saw that story that Powerwall, Elon said, I think it was in the trial testimony, that they have demand for this many Powerwalls and they can't make them all because there's a chip shortage. It's possible the chip shortage is affecting Starlink as well.
Right.
We just don't know. It's affecting so many different things in so many different ways. The other thing I was going to say to you about making videos is I think it's appropriate, like when you talked about making the hiking video, it's certainly appropriate to try something different and see what happens.
Right.
Right?
Well,
You never know.
yeah. I wanted to make the one about my TV news career and like maybe, you know, 3 things you didn't know about what it's like to be a TV news anchor. I don't know.
It's a good title.
And then the other thing, I've done 2 bodybuilding competitions, and there's a lot to unrack there of like what it's really like and is it really worth it for you? So, but I'm like, I don't know, you know.
Well, there's this danger for you that I don't face. If you show yourself in a bodybuilding costume, I don't know if costume's the right term, a bodybuilding outfit. I'm assuming that you know you're attractive and you don't need me to tell you that. And you know there's an audience of people like me watching who think you're attractive. Does it take away from the serious Starlink journalist? And, you know, how do you balance your looks with, you know, you have to live with it, right? I have to live with this. You have to live with that. You're probably a good choice to stick with what you got. You know that happens to women.
For sure.
How challenging is it to balance that? I don't think there's a good answer.
Well, you can look at it 2 ways, right? I wasn't born yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason why I want to make the thumbnail eye-catching.
Sure.
Right? So people click on it. But also, I don't want to take away from the credibility of the information that I'm providing, and that, yes, I'm really doing the research, and yes, I'm really educating myself. And so, you know, while I want to look attractive, because I'm sorry, like, you know, that's part of the game, essentially, is, you know, have people listen to what you say. But yes, there's a delicate balance for sure.
Is it a conscious decision to wear glasses?
I've been wearing them less lately, and I have people complaining, but then I have people complain and say, are those glasses a joke? They're so big. So it's like, you can't win. No,
but I mean, the glasses give you a different look. Like when I see on Instagram, I've seen a couple of videos where you're doing like gymnastics or rock climbing or something, which terrifies me, by the way, but not for, you know, like that's my cousin is like a huge rock climber, climbed some huge mountain in Pakistan, India border. He said something like he's climbing this mountain and, you know, there's like danger of avalanche. And then the Indian and Pakistani armies started shelling each other while they're in an avalanche zone.
Oh my gosh.
Like, well, that's not good. So he's a really advanced climber, but I just never like, there's certain hand strength you have to have for some of the stuff that you do. Like a hike. I can hike in a mountain. You know, once I got to grab hold of, I don't have the hand strength, or maybe I just got too much mass to move around.
Right.
But even when I was younger and fit, it was not something that I was good at. I weighed a lot less and was a lot stronger. And what is it? It's a hand strength. There's something special you have to have, or
I would say, grip strength's really good. Forearm strength. A lot of people, when they first climb with me, their forearms get like pumped, is what we call it, right? They're just, you know, at a certain point you can't climb anymore that day because, you know, you're wrecked, you're spent. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. But a lot of people are turned off by maybe how hard the first time is.
Yeah.
And, you know, I already have pretty like gross calluses. So I already have that, you know, the knurling on the dumbbells and stuff kind of rips up your hands. So those are good to keep my hands, you know, my grip strong.
I never got to the first try, so I wasn't intimidated by my forearms getting pumped. I was intimidated by even looking at it and saying, no, I'm not doing that.
Well, people are scared of falling too. And yes, I'm scared of falling too, but I know that there's padding and that all, you know, I mean, be fairly safe. I mean, yes, you can still hurt yourself and have freak accidents inside the rock gym, but way less than when you're outside. Outside is like, you do not mess with safety.
Right.
You better know your climbing partner. You better have complete faith in them. And even still, things can go wrong.
You can do everything right and something can go wrong.
I had something go very wrong on my first. Was called a multi-pitch, which is like several routes so that you're climbing hundreds and hundreds of feet off the ground. And my hair got stuck in the rappel device. So in the belay device, it sucked up. It was like 40-mile-an-hour winds. I kid you not. So I'm swinging around and it sucks it up. I had to rip out.
I was gonna say you had to cut some hair, right?
I had to pull it out, like just ripping my hair. It was horrible because I was free hanging too. So the wind was just whipping me around. I'm sitting there in my harness. My guide's 120 feet below me.
Right.
No one can hear what I'm saying, screaming. It's at Smith Rock, which is a very popular state park in Oregon. Everyone who's hiking the area and looking at the girl rappelling and seeing me stuck is like, what's going on? Is she gonna fall? And,
right. But you made it.
I still love climbing. I'll do it. I'll do it. But there's certain, it's like if it doesn't appeal to you, you're not going to take the risk. It's like downhill mountain biking. That scares me so much. My friends are really good at it. Every single time I'm like, I'm going to go over and break something. So there's certain things you're willing to risk your safety for. I'm following it all the time. I mean, I look up Starlink. I literally Google Starlink every day and look at the news tab and see. One of the videos that did kind of well on my channel, I found on Reddit, this guy in Arizona that kept having his dishy shut down because of the heat. Yeah. So that was interesting. I saw that thread and I started working on the video, and sure enough, the next day, The Verge and Ars Technica and all these articles were already up about it. So I got on that real quickly. But.
Actually, that makes me think of something, not something we need to necessarily talk about, but I was in a Clubhouse conversation. I don't know if you've heard Elon talking about the wiring for Tesla cars and maybe going to 48-volt wiring instead of 12-volt wiring. And so I guess that allows you to make the wires thinner and they don't generate as much heat. And somebody said that Starlink, that Dishy, what do we call it? Dishy McFlatface?
Dishy McFlatface.
The Dishy uses 48-volt. So, so that might be an interesting video for you. That's probably not something I'm going to cover. What are the what voltage does Starlink's does Dishy use, and what does that mean? It's a really esoteric point. And I don't know how many viewers are going to care, but what are the advantages that you get from going to 48 volts if that's what they're doing, right? And maybe you could find somebody to interview who actually knows something, because I don't, to talk about that.
I think that's also something too, is like you'll make some videos and it's not going to be a big hit, but you make it anyway because that some of your loyal subscribers will appreciate it.
Are you on Patreon yet?
I am. I have 2 patrons.
It'll grow. When did you start?
I made an account and I buried a link in my About Me section and 2 people found it. Understanding
Wall Street is a whole different thing, but I genuinely believe there's a strong chance that by 2026, Tesla will be worth more than $20,000 a share. And it's worth $700 a share now. So you can check my channel for, I mean, even I just made a video where I think it's going to 4X by the end of 2022. And it's sort of like Starlink. Like when I say Starlink is going to get 100 million customers, like you know enough about it now to say, well, that's not crazy, right? Well, if it's not crazy for Starlink to get 100 million customers at $1,000 a year, which is, $100 a month is $1,200 a year. So I'm already knocking the price down. Right? It's really $80 a month at $1,000 a year. Well, that's $100 million. That's $100 billion a year in revenue. And I think my cost explanation made sense to you, right? This is what it costs for the satellite. This is what it costs to launch it. If you 10x it, you're still at 10 billion a year. You've got 90 billion in profit. Well, that's a lot of profit. That basically turns Starlink into $1 trillion or $3 trillion or $5 trillion company. From something that SpaceX alone, SpaceX in total is worth about $100 billion now. So the potential for Starlink to grow. So you can take the same kind of thinking about Tesla. All right, I can't think of anything else. I love talking to you. I think, but I probably should get back to my life.
Yep. No, I really enjoyed this. Yeah, I have to go to work anyway. So,
okay.
Fun stuff for me. I hope I was helpful for your conversation. I really appreciate, and I'm really honored that you wanted to talk to me, because I'm just kind of exploring this and learning. Not quite the expert that you are, but hopefully a unique, to have a female perspective. Oh, it might be
fun, isn't it?
It's like a unicorn. So
isn't it fun?
It is. It is.
This is what Tim Dodd told me, Everyday Astronaut. He said, if it stops being fun, why are you doing it? Because he felt, I'm sorry for continuing. I don't know how much time you have, but he felt like he was doing all these videos from down at Starbase, and he started to ask himself, are we still having fun?
Right.
You know, because he has enough money at this point, you know, and he's not, I don't think he's chasing, and like he doesn't, same conversation, you know, don't just chase the dollar, make sure you're still having fun. And the truth is, I watch Everyday Astronaut because I like seeing him have fun.
Yeah.
The reason I watch him if I watch him rather than something else is because he's just so much fun to watch, because he's really enjoying. And you know, the funniest thing is, like you said, Scott Manley's down to earth. I'm in person with Tim Dodd, and he's exactly the guy that you see on his videos. He's not somebody, he's not doing an act. I think there's a lot of people, there's this tendency to like do an act.
Yeah.
When you're doing your videos. And I think I'm genuine. I think I'm me. I don't think the guy that you see in my videos. I mean, sometimes I get silly and I do something crazy, although I kind of do that in person anyway. I don't think that's different from me. I did this, the video I just did, I was like making crazy faces and wiping my forehead with dollar bills because I'm so terrified about Tesla stock going down.
I got to see that.
It's just silliness, but you know, but I think if you start getting too much into the act,
yeah,
you lose yourself. And but I thought it was really good when he said, anyway, I got to let you go to work. Thank you very much for chatting with me. Anything else before we go?
No, I'm just really excited to, I'm sure we'll probably talk again in a few months, because there's always stuff to talk about.
If you do go to Texas, I'm planning to go to Texas at some point. I'd love to meet you in person.
I want to cover the orbital test flight, and I'm just waiting to find out when that'll be, because I swear to you, I'm booking a flight and I'm going
Same
there.
here.
I have to go there. I have to be there for that. Come on, man. Like,
I'm planning to fly to Austin, see Giga Texas, and like just basically take a week or two and wait for the launch.
That's what I want to do. We should collaborate, but I don't know when that'll be because of the EPA. Okay. We'll have fair warning, right? I mean, they're not just going to do it the day of.
Right.
We'll know. Okay. That's the plan.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Nice to chat with you. Have a great day. Bye.